Hello, Andrew, and welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, Avish. How are you?
I am fantastic. Even more excited now that we get a chance to chat. So it's been a while. You and I, we met years ago through the Speakers Association. I feel like
Mhm.
I make that intro many times on this podcast. But it's been a little while since we connected. So why don't you, bring me up to speed and bring the sort of listeners up to speed as to who you are and what you are up to these days.
Sure. So, maybe the shortest background to lead into what I'm up to now, for those who have no idea who I am, and Avish, if you have somehow forgotten
I
my
have,
nerdy
I have.
ways, that no, my background is I have a degree in computer science and engineering from the Ohio State University. Spent a number of years as a project manager at Procter and Gamble, working on IT projects. Started doing improv and stand up in university. Realized the improv and stand up was helping me way more than any of the technical stuff that I'd learned as a project manager. So I started exploring that intersection of humor in the workplace, improv in business, happiness, and productivity. I eventually left P&G, and that was like 13 years ago at this point, which is crazy. And I teach people how to use humor to be more effective in their work. And what I'm up to currently is we are wrapping up. Many people may not know this, is that April is International Humor Month. We've been trying to get it labeled as Intergalactic Humor Month, but we realize we don't know other planets' calendar systems. So we're just going to stick to International Humor Month. And so I've been selected for this year as the director of International Humor Month for AATH, the Association for Applied Therapeutic Humor. So we've been doing 30 days of humor. So that's been kind of my last basically the month of April. It's been something every single day around humor and its values and how we get out there to more people and how it applies across business, healthcare, education, and life. And there's been a whole host of things that we've been doing as part of it, but it's been an absolute blast. Tiring, but an absolute
I
blast.
was gonna say it sounds like a ton of fun, but exhausting to do something
Mhm.
every single day, including weekends. And are you doing this
Yep.
live or are you just posting?
We're posting stuff. I'm scheduling now, and like in an ideal world. So I joke that I don't procrastinate, but I do believe in just in time productivity. And so I only do things when I have to. And in a perfect world, it'd be like, oh yeah, I had everything scheduled out as of, January 1st. And this was good. It's like, no, we're writing things the day before. There's some live component to it. There's challenges that we're doing. There's research that we're sharing. So it's not something live every single day, but there's content coming out every single day or a challenge every single day. Which is great because I think at the end of the day, the goal I think for many of us, I would assume that you're probably pretty similar, is that when we're talking about humor or improv or something else, it's you want to turn it into a habit,
Yep.
right? You want to make it not a thing that happens every now and then by happenstance, but more about bringing intention into the way that not just how you work, but how you live. And so that's part of the goal also of, hey, if you do this for 30 days, maybe you instill it in yourself as a habit to live a little bit happier, a little bit freer, and ultimately get better results doing it.
Yeah, I love that. And you're talking about procrastination or just in time. Well, as we are recording this, it's actually very close to the time where we're releasing it. But if all goes as planned, this is going to come out right at the end of April, so at the end of that month. Can people? We'll start in with the self promotion right away. Is there a location people can go if they missed out on April? Can they go back and see some of this great content you put out?
Absolutely, yeah. If you go to humormonth.com, we've got that's where we're kind of putting all of the any new stuff coming out plus any old stuff, and it's become basically this repository. And I mean, speaking of, this is maybe perhaps fitting is that on Sunday, this past Sunday, based on when you're hearing that when this is hitting your ears, Sunday, we are sharing research on the benefits of improv in life,
Ooh.
right? So every Sunday we're doing research. We've already shared, how humor impacts personal relationships. We've talked about therapeutic clowning because that's been one of the interesting things. Is
Wow.
that I've been helping to the whole thing with AATH in general is we're spreading all the different types of humor. Improv being a way that you can use humor,
Mm-hmm.
storytelling being another way. My background, kind of at stand-up and engineering, is a different way, and therapeutic clowning or laughter yoga, etc. All these other
Sure.
different aspects of humor is there. So humormonth.com, they can find all of those resources connected to AATH, which has a bunch of more resources too.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that you're posting things every day for 30 days. I hope it'll become a habit, which sort of
Mhm.
transitions into your almost, I think, your premise as a speaker and humor expert, and something I believe in as well, but something that not everyone agrees with. So you believe this whole building habit. You believe humor is something that people can learn, develop, and improve on. It's not just you're either funny or you're not, and that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's like any skill, right? Like, I think there's certain people that are perhaps more inclined to do it better, or maybe I don't know if it's genetically predisposed. Like, so it's like, if I had practiced basketball every single day of my life, I would be a much better basketball player than I am right now. But at 5'11" and barely 140 pounds, there's zero amount of work that I could have done to make it to the NBA, right?
Right.
Like, and so versus like say LeBron James, who yeah, maybe was quote unquote born to play, but also put in a tremendous amount of work to get there. So, I think similar humor is kind of a similar thing where, we believe that anyone can learn to be funny, right? Like, it's not, you're not necessarily going to become across the board funny where we can turn any individual person and say, hey, in a year you're going to have Netflix comedy special. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's also not the goal. Our goal at Humor That Works, the company that I started, isn't to teach people how to use humor for entertainment purpose, for
Mm-hmm.
them to get on stage or to, become an actor or stand-up comedian or whatever. It's to teach them this skill of humor to one, unlock their kind of true, authentic self in the workplace, right? Because if we're talking about authenticity, then humor has to be part of the equation. And two, to actually get better results. And that I think is what's really fascinating to me about humor. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is not that it's like, oh yeah, you should enjoy work more because you're going to spend 90,000 hours there in your lifetime. And that's true. But the reason why I'm excited about it is not only does it make it more fun, it actually makes you more effective at doing it. And so that's kind of where my intersection is both teaching it as a skill, but specifically as a skill to improve your work and your life.
Yeah, and that's so. I think the immediate skepticism or pushback that some people have is, and I think this might tie into one of your personas you talk about, but some people don't. They want to have fun at work, but they don't want like the clown or the joker. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it's really annoying to have that person at work. You're trying to work, and they're always making everything a joke. Or so where's that balance? Because I'm biased. I obviously believe in the power of humor, but some people like it's a little bit harder to sell. Or for me, with improvisation, they're like, well, I don't want to improvise. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you don't have to throw away the script, but having those skills. So kind of how do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish I could give you a percentage, right? I'm an engineer by training, computer science is my degree. I wish I could tell you, use humor exactly 10.78% of the time, 10.78% of the time, and that's like the golden sweet. Like, I wish I could give you a number like that, but it doesn't really exist. I think the trade-off or the balance is to recognize to use humor more intentionally to get better results. It's interesting. We did some research with a gentleman named Pablo Suarez at the Red Cross, and where he was working on using humor to improve his presentations. And some people are surprised by that because they're like, hey, the Red Cross, these are pretty serious presentations that they have to
Yeah.
give. Like one of the things he wanted to add humor to was presentations on disaster preparedness. And Pablo shared, he said, if what you're communicating is important, then boredom has very serious consequences, right? Which makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right? If he's teaching people what to do in case there's a flood, and he is so dry and so boring when talking about that people zone out completely, or they start scrolling on their phones, or they get up and leave the room completely, then if a flood happens, they've missed that information, and that can have very dire circumstances in
Yeah.
that particular scenario. And so he wanted to say, okay, well, how do we use humor to maintain that engagement, right? Because we want to say, hey, this is still serious, but we want to make sure that people are paying attention, and humor is a great way to do that. Anyway, the reason why I'm telling this story is that we did with one of his sets of presentations, we did a survey of the group afterwards, and the first one of the questions that we asked was like, how much humor was used in this presentation? Was it way more than average, the average amount, or lower than average? And everyone was like, oh, this was way more humor than used on average. The second question we asked was, what was the appropriate amount of humor? Was, do you think more humor should have been added? Was this the right amount of humor or less humor? And pretty much everyone either said this was the right amount of humor or even more humor could have happened. And these were like very serious people, the very serious audience kind of taking it. And so what we take away from that is us using way more humor than we're used to actually resulted in this was the right amount of humor
Yep.
that we should have used, right? And so my point to you is what I'm saying is most people, yeah, people have this fear where it's like, no, but I don't want to be seen as a clown or I want to be taken seriously. I agree with that, and I can give you some tips on how to make sure that it happens, but just know that a drastic increase in the amount of humor that you use to begin with, for a lot of people, just even gets you to a baseline of like, oh, this is already feeling good, or I could
Uh-huh.
use even a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And how I like to describe it to people is I say, I'm just giving you tools in your toolbox, right? Just because you
Exactly.
know how to use humor doesn't mean you have to use it every moment of every day. But if you never have the tool, well, then you can't use it at all. So, um,
Exactly. And that's a wonderful way to think about it. And the way that we drive some of that clarity, and this is what, you alluded to the personas. So one of the things, kind of going back to this question of like, can you even learn to be funny,
mm-hmm,
right? Or is it innate or in your DNA, et cetera, is like we said, one, we believe anyone can learn to be funnier. And two, we believe that humor is a skill, which means it can be learned, which means the question isn't, are you funny? The question is, what kind of funny are you? Or what kind of funny do you want to
mm-hmm,
be? Right. And so we've discovered 7 primary ways people tend to express their humor. One of them is what we call the humor engineer. And the humor engineer, each kind of persona has a really strong tool that helps them
yeah,
exhibit that humor a little bit better. For the humor engineer, we use what we call the map, your medium, your audience, and purpose. So when you're
mm-hmm,
thinking about, do I want to use humor in this presentation at work, or in this email that I have to send to a potential client, or on my way home from, a really long day in the office, right? You think about, okay, what's your medium? How are you going to execute the humor? Who's your audience? Who's going to receive that humor? And then most importantly, what's your purpose for using humor? Because it's not, hey, I just want to use humor so that people think that I'm funny, or just using humor for the sake of humor. It's like saying,
mm-hmm,
oh, no, I want to use humor in this presentation because I want to get people to like me and want to buy from me. It's very different than I want to use humor in this presentation to get people to understand what I'm talking about so that they can remember it and understand it a little bit better, right? Those are different
right.
reasons and different types of humor that we would use. And so when you have that clarity of the map and you're doing it with intention and for a specific reason, very rarely do you get into that phase where you're now seen as a clown or a jester that no one takes you seriously because you have a reason for doing it.
Yeah, I like that intentionality idea. I don't know if you, because you've done stand up and improv, so I don't know if you were like me. There was a point in my life, a lot of improv friends, and sometimes it almost got to a point where it was just annoying hanging out with improv comedy people because some of them don't have this intentionality. They don't know how to turn it off. And so
Mhm.
you'd be like at a wedding and they'd be making jokes to you like, no, shut up. I'm trying to pay attention here.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know if you experienced that, but some people just don't understand. Even if you're like, your whole thing is, I'm not doing this for performance, but even if you are doing it for performance, there's still intentionality. So it's such a nice, and you said that's the engineer persona, but any persona can use that same idea of the medium audience and purpose.
Exactly, yeah. And the personas, we're very intentional in calling them personas because we don't want people to think that they're set personality things. And if you're like, oh, if I'm a humor engineer, then that means I can't be a curator. It's like, no, the ultimate goal is we want to teach you how to go in between each of these different personas and kind of do them well. In some ways, they are, whether another way that we think about them are just different competencies of the skill of humor.
Yeah.
Right. The a certain thing that you're able to do. But you're exactly right. Because what's interesting is that a lot of the people that we work with are like me, who are introverted, sometimes socially awkward people, someone who basically has never been quote unquote funny and has been perceived as funny, right? Like I had to learn all this stuff. And that's how I know that humor is a skill because I am someone who has to learn it. Like I'm not a naturally funny
Mm-hmm.
person. Like when people from my high school found out that I did comedy, they were like, but you're not funny, right? Like I'm not the naturally funny person. It's very against like what my personality types were in school and all that kind of other thing. But what's interesting, I find interesting is that even when we work with the people who are quote unquote naturally funny, going back to this intention and having some skills for it, it helps a lot of people because they're like, oh, I always knew I could make people laugh, but I didn't understand why. or I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do it on command. And so a big part of what we want to do is we want to, I'm an engineer. I like to take things apart and put them back together. So I want to take apart this skill of humor. How does it work? What are the inner workings of it? And then now we can put it back together, and now you can be much more intentional about it. So, when to turn it off, or to your point, yeah, when not, hey, I'm at a wedding, let this person enjoy it, and I don't have to try to be making
Yep.
jokes 24/7.
Yeah, and what I love about the persona is kind of as you said, like originally when I went into it, because you've got so the book is great, by the way, if you're listening, and there's an assessment, right? Your QR code and goes takes you to a website. You can now I didn't take that because just reading the personas, I was immediately like, oh yeah, I'm the entertainer, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I read the book, I'm like, oh wait a second. Like when I read the stuff about the inventor, I'm like, oh, this is also very much like me. And I like how at the end you do point out like it's like the tools in the toolbox, right? Like all seven
Mm-hmm.
personas. It's not this is who you are and this is what you need to do. It's here's the seven personas, and I think you even go into like here are some situations where one is more appropriate than the other, and kind of giving people the tools to use the most. And to your point about the competencies, I thought that was one of the most interesting things about it because you can sort of distill each persona down. I mean, obviously there's elements,
Mm-hmm.
but to a primary competency. How did you figure that out? Because humor is a hard thing to. It's for some people. It's like, I don't know. I know it when I see it. So how did you actually distill that
Yeah, it
down to
was
figure out what those are?
it was a really long process. And so, first of all, I want to say, yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of people, when they take the assessment, or if they read the Skill of Humor playbook, or as they start to learn the different personas, the intent is that you'll probably identify yourself in one or two. And you'll be like, oh, I already do that. And it might be different context, right? I mean, it might be
Mm-hmm.
like for example, one persona is a curator, and this is someone who would take things that they find funny. If they see a meme, or they see a video that made them laugh or something like that, then they'll send it to their group of friends. Or they're the ones always dropping memes or gifs in the group chat with their friends, etc. Well, that's actually a valuable persona, and you can apply that in the workplace if you want. And so some people might naturally be a curator with their friends, and then yeah, if they're a performer, then yeah, when they get on stage, they might become an entertainer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what we say is that we recommend people take the assessment just so they understand what their primary persona is, because that's a great place to start. Every single one of them can have different applications, and you can use what you're good at to get better at the other competencies, to get better at the other personas. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, let's say you're a curator. You are someone who, being a curator is great because you don't have to be the funny person. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you're the one telling jokes, or you have to memorize a story, or have to be very big and kind of use a lot of gestures when you're talking. It's like, no, I literally found this meme. It made me laugh. I know you like this same type of thing, so I'm going to send it to you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that process, getting better at it, means that you're actually learning to think about other people's senses of humor. Because if I see a certain meme about like Halo, the video game, right?
Mm-hmm.
A game that I played way too much in college. It was basically my double major. It was computer science and playing Halo, the video game. Like if I see a very funny meme about that, I'm going to send that to my college buddies. I'm not going to send it to my mom, right? Because she's going to
Yeah.
have no context to what it is or what it means or why it's funny, right? So I'm learning this skill of like, okay, what's this person's sense of humor? What's going to work with them? And over time, I'm learning, oh, if this is really funny content, why is it funny? Right? I can start to analyze it a little bit more. What made it work for this video to be so great? Oh, maybe I can start to adopt some of those traits and techniques myself, right? So essentially, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of this idea one persona can help you learn each of the others. And where this ultimately came from is after the success of the TEDx talk, which now is at a little over 15 million views, and I joke only half of which came from my mom. She does hit refresh on it quite a bit. But after we started talking more and more about that, people were like, okay, I want to get into a little bit deeper. So I wanted to say, like, I'm the engineer. Like, what are the steps to be funny?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are the individual components? So we approached it from two directions. One, from analyzing humor. Let's take a look at a bunch of different types of humor and seeing what's working, what's happening, why is this being used, and what's kind of the mechanism
Mm-hmm.
underneath it. And then from the other side of things, where it was like, okay, how do we actually create it? Because I think that's one of the things that's very different about the humor personas over some of the other ones. There's other kind of things that analyze humor, but a lot of it's post analysis of humor. We wanted to say, what's going to help us to create new humor? What's going to help us if we're starting from scratch? Can we pick something that then says, okay, we're going to create a new moment of humor in the world? And that's where kind of the idea of the competency came from, where it's like, okay, well, this is one way, and this is one way. And we had like, I think 30 ways. And then as you start to analyze it and you get down to it, you're like, oh, these two are basically kind of the same thing. So that can go together in
Right,
one, and
right.
this can go to one. And so it was a very iterative process. And then we started doing workshops and testing it with people and seeing, does this make sense, not make sense, getting feedback on it. And yeah, I wish it was fewer, right? Purely from a like training perspective, I wish I could tell you there were 4 personas, and then because that would help me get through content so much faster.
Oh yeah.
But
Plus
as
with four,
much
you can
as
make
we
a fancy
parsed it,
matrix like, oh, there you
yeah,
go.
exactly. It would be a 4 by 4. I'd
Two
get to be
axes.
able to do the Eisenhower matrix that,
Exactly.
Covey did and all that kind of, it's like, nope, it's gotta be a heptagon.
But
As
seven's a
hard as
nice
that is
number
to
though. It's like
design.
7 habits, you
Yeah.
got a nice number there. All right. So that's great. And the book, as I said, it's a very cool book because we're just talking before we start recording. It's not like just it's not a lot of theory. It's not a lot. I mean, there's theory, but it's not just like fluff. It's not padded out with a tons of long stories. Like it's essentially you call it a playbook, which is like a workbook, but you want to use the word play, which makes total sense.
Yep.
So I highly recommend you go through it. We're not going to go through the whole thing because there's so much. It's just like all information and content, which is great, but still very easy to read, not like a textbook. So let's take it back then, Highlight. You mentioned your TEDx talk, which has 15 million views. It's awesome, and it's a great talk. And you had mentioned that that is sort of the what and the why of the skill of humor. And you go through 3 things in there: the POV, the explore and heighten, and the commit to performance. Do those kind of fit into the overall work you're doing now? Because I know like the TEDx talk was a while ago, the book was a little newer, and so I'd like to talk more about those 3 things. But is that still sort of relevant within the framework of the personas and everything?
Absolutely. So it's evolved since kind of the TEDx talk, and that's where it comes from. So in the TEDx talk, we talk, point of view, we talk about kind of exaggerating and heightening, we talk about delivery. And what I realized is that those sort of map to a couple of fun foundational building blocks of the skill of humor. So the way that we refine that now is we talk about basically the skill of humor is 3 main building blocks. It's your sense of humor, what you find funny, which is essentially your point of view,
Yep.
right? It's your ability to humor. So it's things like comedy techniques. Yes, and might be a component of that as well. If you're talking about improvisation or as a writing tool, like if this is true, what else is true? You might talk about comedy techniques like, the comic triple or setup and punchline, etc. That exaggeration fits within there, as does delivery in terms of like delivery kind of comes into the ability to humor.
Yep.
And then what's sort of missing but implied in the skill of humor than the TEDx talk is the third component, which is the agency with humor. This is what do you use that humor for? Right. And this is what I think I'm very passionate about is going that extra step. This is why I love being a keynote speaker and trainer over just a stand-up comedian. Like I love
Yeah.
still doing stand-up, had a dry bar comedy special come out last year, etc. Like I still do that. But my main thing is a training component because it's if I have this quote unquote power or superpower to make people laugh, some people laugh, not everyone thinks I'm funny, but if I'm able to do that, what am I doing with that? How can I take that even further and go beyond just you laughing for a brief moment
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into something more? Right. And so that's that agency with humor. So those 3 components. So point of view is a sense of humor. Exaggeration plus delivery fits within a ability to humor. And then there's this added component of the agency with humor.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Based on those 3 building blocks, it sounds like the point of view is something that's the authenticity, right? That's the thing that the person needs to figure out for themselves. The the second block, how do you describe that? That was
The ability to
the
humor.
ability. That's where you kind of get into the more in the personas, right? Because kind of what your persona is, how you sort of, and then the agency is the application. You take your point of view and your thing, and that's kind of what you would then go in and work with. If you're working with a team or an organization, that's kind of you would take them through. I mean, obviously with the keynote, you just kind of take the high notes, but if you're doing more of a training, you would kind of take them through those 3 steps and help them identify the persona and figure out how they can apply it. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, and the personas themselves actually sit within each of those building blocks. So the first 2 personas that we often talk about
Mm.
is first the enthusiast, and these are people who have a really strong sense of humor. They are the type of people who like can find appreciation and joys big and small. Right. So one of the examples, like my mom is a massive enthusiast. She is someone who like, when I was first starting out in comedy, would come to every single one of my shows. And even though she like heard the jokes over and over, she would still continually to laugh. Same reason, she probably is the reason why like I had enough confidence to do stand-up comedy once I was pushed into it, because she would laugh at my terrible jokes when I was a kid. Right. So someone who is just generally positive, generally effusive with their humor, very appreciative of the world, can find the positive in it, is an enthusiast. So that's someone with a strong sense of humor. So they kind of sit within that foundational block. We'd also say the curator sits there as well, because if you take that sense of humor, the things that you find funny, and
Mm-hmm.
then start to share with other people, now you become this curator, and that's a persona where it's still the base level is that sense of humor. If you go into the ability to humor, that's where the inventor and the entertainer fall. Because the inventor is someone who can write funny, who is creative, clever, understands comedic structure, setup and punchline, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the entertainer is someone who just talks funny, someone who knows how to perform. Improvisers actually a lot of times fit into both, because even though you're making things up off the top of your head in an improv scene, there's still some structure to it. You might be doing a
Right.
herald for long form, or you might be following, a short form improv game structure or whatever. So there's still a lot of like thinking, and you're delivering lines in an interesting way. And then the next two personas are the agency with humor. So the engineer is about using humor to solve problems, and the advocate is about putting the spotlight on other people, right? Advocating for other
Yeah.
people, promoting other people in the work that they do, which can be an application of humor to create a stronger workplace culture, or more positive connections and teams. And then the final persona, the one that was an afterthought for a while, that kind of trends in or goes across all of them, is what we call the skeptic. And when we're first kind of researching the skeptic, the first idea behind it was kind of like, well, if you don't think I'm funny and you think this is all dumb, we're just going to put you all in the skeptic camp, right? So it's kind of like a bad thing to be.
Yeah.
And then as we started doing more and more research and talking to more and more people, skepticism is really valuable when it comes to using humor for two ways. One, editing and any type of thing, right? Like we talk about writing isn't actually writing, it's editing.
Yep.
Like to know whether you're good or not, it's how do you edit down? How do you take what Seinfeld says is kind of the rule of 90, where he says that 90% of what you write is going to be crap,
Yep.
right? And only the top 10% is going to be good. Well, how do you actually know what's good versus not? That's a good consideration competency. That's a skeptic being like, I wrote this, but it's terrible. Like I should not
Yeah.
tell that to anyone because it's not funny at all, right? So editing down. And then the other aspect of consideration is recognizing that not all jokes are equal. Not everyone's going to perceive jokes the same way. And so as we try to create humor that is positive and inclusive for people, we should be in some ways editing ourselves, or recognizing if someone else uses humor that's inappropriate, that we have the skill set to pull them aside and let them know why it's inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're creating a safe space for everyone to be able to be involved, as opposed to creating in and out groups, etc. So that persona kind of goes across all of them, but that's how
Yeah.
they fit into the building blocks.
Okay. No, thanks for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense, and I like how that works. And I also appreciate the idea about keeping it inclusive, because I think sometimes with humor it can be like the class clown, like you sort of mentioned you were not, but it often is like the one person who needs the attention. And I like the idea of keeping it more inclusive. And along those lines, as you were talking and talking about like your mom coming to see the show, she's the enthusiast, and I don't know if you talk about this, but as you were saying that, it got me thinking that like the book is kind of geared towards identifying your persona and
Mhm.
understanding how you can, but it also seems like it'd be a very useful tool for understanding others.
Mhm.
So like I present my humor in a certain way, but if you respond differently than I'm expecting you to, it doesn't necessarily mean that A, you didn't find me funny, and it doesn't mean that we're not, aligned. It just means that, oh, you're not the entertainer persona. You're the skeptic, or
Mhm.
you're the curator. So you're not necessarily gonna guffaw at everything I say, but you might share it or something. So
Mhm.
I feel like it's a way of also seeing not just yourself, but kind of how the rest of the world works.
Absolutely. And I mean, one, the fact that you're thinking like that, that is a component of the advocate, right? You're thinking of other people and
Mm,
how does this person use humor? And how can I then change? And that's what we've heard from people in our workshop, is kind of like, oh, I completely understand why my brother is constantly sending me memes now. right? He's a curator. That's a form of connection. And,
Yeah.
and that's what's interesting is like there's research that shows when two people laugh at the same thing, they become closer together, right? And so memes are a way to actually build connection because it's like, hey, I thought this was funny. I'm sending it to you because I think you'll think that it's funny. And the other person's like, oh, whoa, hey, that's great. This person is thinking of me. And also they get me enough because they're right. This is like something that I enjoy, or I'm so happy that you sent it, right? So it's a way of building those connections. And so, yeah, absolutely. If you think like an advocate and you start to understand like, oh, well, and this is what great leaders do, right? Where you're like, if I have Avish or someone like Avish on my team, and like I know that you're a really strong entertainer, I might be like, hey, Avish, for our next all hands meeting, could you be the MC? Like, because it's a skill set that you have, and if you enjoy it, then it's kind of like, hey, there's a little bit of visibility. You could do something kind of fun, even if our job is nothing related to performance, except like, but it's
Yeah.
saying that's a skill set. Whereas if I know that I've got like someone who's very good at inventor but hates standing up in front of people, then that would maybe be a terrifying thing to ask them. Right. And so you can start to understand what are the skill sets, what are the things people are good at, what do they enjoy, and either put them into positions to succeed and or use it to better influence them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if you know someone is just an enthusiast, then you can just start sharing things that you find really funny or interesting with them. Or if you know someone's an entertainer, then make sure that you become that enthusiast persona for them, because that's the thing that we as entertainers need. Like that's why
Yeah.
enthusiasts are so valuable, is it's kind of like we want the audience to laugh, right? And so
Yeah.
when we do a show, we want an audience of enthusiasts. We don't want skeptics there to be like, "Hey, make me laugh. I'm
Oh
gonna make
yeah.
you work for it." No, we want the people that are like,
We've
"Oh, that was
all been in
great."
front of those audiences. Everywhere. It's not
Uh-huh.
fun, but yeah, I love that. And I like how you alluded to leaders because I think sometimes leaders are like, oh, I want to make a fun workplace, a positive workplace. But then they do that blanket and like, okay, everyone's gonna do this fun activity, and it's
Yeah.
fun for like three of the group, and the other seven people are like, oh, this is terrible. So, well, let's talk about that because we're kind of coming towards the end of our time here, and we've talked a lot about your book and your TEDx talk, which everyone should go watch the TEDx talk and go get the book and read it. We're gonna link to that. But let's just say someone's listening. Let's take it from two perspectives. Start with a leader.
Yep.
What would be the first step? Obviously, get your book and watch your TEDx talk. But what's kind of to start implementing some of these ideas? How should a leader kind of just get started with developing humor as a skill, or using humor to improve their team, their culture, their workforce?
Yeah, I mean, there's three. We work a lot with leaders, and so there's three ways that leaders I think can encourage more humor in the kind of work environment or the group that they're in. One is they can talk about the benefits of it because we did a study to understand why people didn't use more humor in the workplace. Because we're like, if there's so many benefits, there's 30 plus benefits to using humor in the workplace backed by research, case studies, real world examples,
Mm-hmm.
ranging from increasing productivity to improving employee engagement to reducing stress to on and on and on. We're like, oh, there's all these benefits. Why don't people use it more? And the number one reason why people didn't use more humor in their work was that they didn't think that their boss or coworkers would approve,
Hmm.
right? Which means that if you are on a team, especially if you're the leader of a team and you don't see that your team is constantly laughing with each other, sharing a little bit of humor, a little bit of levity, trying some of these things out there, if they're not having fun, then you are probably the reason why, right?
Interesting.
Like
Yeah.
not maliciously or intentionally, but there might be something in the way that you're working or the culture of the organization is happening that they don't feel like they can be comfortable using it. And so the way you get around that is one, as a leader, you can talk about the benefits of humor. Hey, I read this interesting book, or I saw this interesting talk, or I was listening to this interesting podcast, whatever it is, and just kind of talk about like, hey, here's this Harvard Business Review article about the value of humor, or here's these books from some Stanford professors, or whatever it is that wherever you want to get this content from, you can start to say, hey, this is interesting, let's try it. Because one, you're giving them permission. So
Yeah.
that's one way to do it. The second way to do it is to recognize it in other people, right? To be like, hey, so and so, I really like that you started that last presentation with the story. It got us kind of engaged. Now I understand where you're coming from. Or, hey, great email that you sent that got people kind of like that meme was like exactly what I was like, just calling out good examples of it.
Yep.
And then probably the biggest thing that you can do is start using humor yourself, right? Because if people see that you're using humor and how you're using humor, they'll start to be like, oh, well, maybe I can do that same thing. right? Maybe I can, one, if you're doing it, then it's probably okay for me to do it, and then I can learn from, etc. Now, of course, you could hire someone like Avish or myself or whoever and like do this more formally, but you can also start with that, like those three things, talking about the benefits
Right.
of it, calling out good examples of it, and then doing it yourself. That's where I would start. Now, for anyone wanting to start to use humor, I'll give you two different paths that you can take. If if you're like, hey, this is cool, I kind of like this as an idea, I would encourage you just go to humorthatworks.com and fill out our completely free survey. It takes about 2 minutes to find out what your primary persona is. And the only reason why I suggest that is because you want to start small and you want to start
Yep.
with your natural strengths. Start with the things that are already easiest for you. And then based on your persona, there might be 3, 4, 5 quick things that you can do to get started. Right. So that's one way. If you like art, kind of the way that I frame this, go there, completely free resource. That's an easy next step is just go take the survey, find out your primary persona, get a couple of examples on how to do that well. If you don't like anything that I'm talking, if you're like, I love the idea of humor, but I hate your voice,
Stop
then
listening.
what I would encourage, the other thing that we encourage people to do is to try to instill this as a habit. And the way that we think about that is what we say to drive 1 smile per hour. Try to think about what can you do each hour of your day to bring a little bit of levity to that hour in some way, right? To either bring a smile to your face or the face of someone else. So if you're, if you got a 45-minute commute in the morning before you go into work, what's one thing that you can do on that commute that's going to make you smile? Maybe that's listen to a podcast that you really enjoy or listen to some upbeat music, right? Or maybe it's just completely avoid the news so it doesn't start your day off in a bad kind of mindset, whatever it is, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
something to create a smile. If you're getting ready to sit in a meeting, what's one thing that you can do in that meeting as a leader to say, okay, let's start with the 5 minute icebreaker question to get to know each other a little bit better. If you're going to if you're processing email, one of the things that I do is, when I'm going through emails, I'll sometimes read emails in a different accent in my head where it's like, okay, what would it sound like if this person was Arnold Schwarzenegger that sent me this, or if this was the Incredible Hulk, or what, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just something playful in my own mind. And if you try to think, okay, each hour of the day, what's one thing that I can do, you start to naturally develop a humor habit. You start to see the ways that you are kind of more inclined to be like, oh, I like this idea of listening to music. I'm never going to do accents in my head, so let me just skip that idea.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I'm reading or listening to an audiobook. I forget the exact title. It's like The Fun Habit or something. It's basically the same sort of idea about the power of bringing fun into our lives, right? You got
Mm-hmm.
humor, he's got fun, other people got joy, but and the what I like about that kind of combining is one of the things he's recommending is like just make a list. Number one, like just like he
Mm-hmm.
says 8 to 15 that because I could see for myself if I was like yes I'm gonna do one smile an hour and then tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. be like oh crap I need a smile what should I do but if I have a list of like
Mm-hmm.
things to pull from and the one to bring it back to me for a moment but prior principle you talk about as well is one of the things about improvisation is be willing to fail right you take a step see what
Mm-hmm.
happens so when you're starting with this I would say and you can correct me if I'm wrong but like do something you think will bring you a smile and if it doesn't like you said like that worked it doesn't but I in my experience I found a lot of people just don't get started until they have like the perfect plan for how to do
Mm-hmm.
one smile a day so just try it out see what happens and if it didn't work well try something different
Exactly. Then it's research, right? That's the nice thing is like
yeah
if you think in terms of a research mindset, anytime you're trying something new, it's like, yeah, you're just putting it on a like a hat just to see, hey, does this hat look good on me? Nope, I hate that hat. Let me try this other one. Like, I'm just
yep
gonna try this thing. Like, for example, being the director of International Humor Month, as I mentioned with AATH, there's a lot of people in AATH that do laughter yoga. And laughter yoga is basically based on this premise that there are a lot of physiological benefits to laughing, right?
mm-hmm.
When we laugh, just physically, we increase blood flow through our body, relax our muscles, we boost our immune system. There's a whole bunch of things that are actually happening, release of endorphins, all that kind of other stuff. What they found is that the body still does all those things, whether the laugh is incredibly genuine because you saw the funniest thing in the world, or you simply forced yourself to laugh for like 1 minute,
Interesting
right? And then by laughing for 1 minute, a lot of times that leads to, so basically there's people who lead like entire 30 or 60-minute sessions of laughter yoga where there's not a single joke told. It's just exercises to force yourself to laugh. I understand the research. I know that is incredibly effective. I know it's incredibly powerful for some people. I have tried it on. I tried that on and I was like, you know what? I don't look good in that hat. Like
Yep.
that is not, I'd rather watch a comedy video or do some improv or something else. That's not to knock it. It's not to say that it's bad. It's just to say for me, that one particular thing didn't work.
Right. Like
So,
you're
and
saying,
that's where
not
the
every
skepticism
hat is for every head. So,
exactly. So then you try something else. You do it. So I love that as an example to just like, try it on, see what works, see what doesn't. And what's cool is you now give yourself an excuse to try a bunch of things, right? Rather than thinking, oh no, maybe I tried it and it doesn't fail. Go in knowing that some things are going to fail. Now you get to say, oh, now it's a research. Now it's a puzzle. Now it's an experiment of me seeing what works, what doesn't work, what I like. And here's the cool thing about humor is like if you find something that you do like, if it at Tuesday, at 10 a.m., you do, hey, I watched a funny video and it put me in a better mood. You can do the exact same thing tomorrow. It's not like you've got to come up with a
mm.
brand new idea now. Like, oh, I did a video yesterday, so I got to do something. It's like, no, find a different video. Like, or watch the exact same video.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently rewatching the TV show Psych, which I've probably seen a couple times, and I find it hilarious. And
Wonderful.
I've seen it before. Some of them, some of the jokes I know are coming, and I'm still laughing at them. So all right. Well, we're gonna thanks so much for all that. We're gonna finish up here. I got a couple random questions for you, and then I'm gonna give you a chance to promote yourself again, and then one final question. So the random questions, a couple of the random questions. One, it's funny when you were telling your story way at the beginning how you got started. I'm like, your story and my story are so similar because I went to college to get an engineering degree, transferred to computer science, started doing improv in college. I did performing in high school, but I had no intention of doing it, and then it sort of led to improv, and now I use improv as a tool. So the other thing that's very similar is the your nerdiness. Everything you said you're into is like, fantasy, sci-fi, computers, computer games, video games, comic books as well, or no? Is that
a little bit, not as much as not so much that I can hold my weight against real comic book quote unquote nerds, but I do enjoy them. Yeah.
Sure. So what is your current kind of nerdy interest or obsession? What are you like into right now? Reading, watching, digging deep into?
I mean, I'm a sucker for anything MCU. So of course,
Nice.
recently just caught up on the new Daredevil series. The thing that I'm into now, which some people consider it cheating, the true D&D fans kind of consider it, some consider it cheating a little bit, is Baldur's Gate 3.
Ah.
So me and some friends from college get together once a week and we play the co-op,
Oh,
collaborative
interesting.
mode of Baldur's Gate 3, and we absolutely love it. Like it's D&D, but the AI and the computer gets to be the dungeon master. We all get to play and do our builds and stuff like
I
that.
didn't
And
even
it
realize it had a. I don't have Baldur's Gate 3 yet. I played 1 all the way through and 2 part way through. I don't have 3 yet. I didn't even know there was a co-op mode on that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So it's like we're sitting around together back in college and playing D&D together, but again, like, someone else is the dungeon master. We don't feel bad. Like, no, it's truly wonderful. We jump on and we geek out about the builds, and then we, every now and then it's our, it's a couple of dudes, and so it's like our like also we'll be like fighting a monster, and then also like, hey, how's your mom doing as well? Like, it's a nice kind of like
Well, that's
it's a
the thing.
dude
It's
phone
like D
call.
and D and role playing, gaming. It's all so social. Everyone thinks it's like
Mhm.
nerdy, antisocial. The whole point of it is it's an incredibly social activity.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, do people kind of lose sight of that? It's
exactly.
sort of almost a humor persona thing, right? Different people connect. Some people connect watching a football game, and others will connect like exercising, and some will
Mhm.
connect over games. So it's sort of a similar thing to the personas. So
Yep.
cool. Okay, next random question, or second, and I think last random question. So you've done improv comedy for a long time as well. Do you have not an absolute favorite, but like what would you say is one of your favorite improv games to play in front of an audience?
I love I mean I love the line games or the pun games, so 185 and World's
Oh yeah.
Worst and that kind of thing. And absolutely love guessing games. Like when we were in college, we played Home Shopping Network a lot.
Oh,
And
that
then
I'm
I
more
was
familiar
with
with.
Comedy Sports for a long time when I was still in New York, and we would do five things
Oh
often.
yeah,
And so
five things.
those gibberish plus like those types of games, loved those, and particularly loved being the guesser, of course.
Of course.
But also the clue giver. So those are probably my favorite.
Yeah, I as a keynoter, and I do a lot of improv within the keynote. And I tried to figure out, it was like a challenge, a puzzle. Like, how do I play these? Because normally improv, you get 2,
Mhm.
3, 10 experienced improvisers. I'm like, how can I play these solo? And I figured out a lot of them.
Yep.
I have not been able to figure out how do you do a guessing game because with just one experienced improviser. But those are
Yeah,
I
because they both the get being the guesser and the clue giver, you've got to know there's
yeah,
some
there's
things that
skills
help to move
involved and
that along
experience.
exactly, and to bring a complete novice to like get them to be able to guess what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah, because
yeah,
when you
I
get
can see
a,
that as a challenge.
you would think you would think like anyone can guess, but when you get an inexperienced, when the person's not guessing right, it just deflates the game
Yeah,
so
it's
bad.
there's certain games that you can see that you as an improviser, you're strong enough to save no matter like
Yeah,
because
I'll
I've seen
carry
your
it.
keynote like a ding, like when you play ding or whatever, it's like no matter whether they ding too many times or they never ding at all, you're going to be skilled enough to
Yeah,
like know how to manage that. Like you said, it's hard to save a guessing game
that's the one.
if one of
Yeah,
the
that's the
people are
one I haven't
particularly
quite
bad.
figured out. So, awesome. All right. Well, hey, great talk, Andrew. Let people know how can they learn more about you, work with you if they want to, get your book. Where should we send people?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest place is just go to humorthatworks.com. That's kind of it's meant to be a repository for people. So there's a bunch of free resources on there. That's where the free quiz as well. And so that's what I'd recommend people start with. There's a link to the Skill of Humor playbook. We also have the Humor That Works book, which is kind of the what, why, and how the research. That's where all the stories are and the research and all that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff is in that book. We also have a book called 501 Ways to Use Humor. So if you're like, hey, I like the idea of 1 mile per hour, but I don't know what to do. We put together a list that's like 500 different ways across
Oh,
different categories and stuff.
cool.
So you can kind of check those out and just, pick one from them. But all that's at humorthatworks.com. You can also follow me on social media or connect with me on like LinkedIn, etc. All that information's on the website. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about because, I was kind of gently, but I was pushed into improv and stand up in university, and it kind
Mm-hmm.
of changed my life. And so now I'm very passionate about trying to be that gentle push for other people
Mm-hmm.
of using humor. And so, if anyone has any questions, thoughts, concerns about it, I'm always very open to chatting about it or, sharing resources, other things, because I know how transformative it can be. And I want to, help other people see that transformation too.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate that fully. So, last question. This is try to end all of these little podcast interviews. So, I talk about this idea, the improv idea of yes and is sort of what I've
Mhm.
pitched my wagon to. And one of the reasons I do that is I honestly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just switched their default and started from a place of yes and instead of yes but. So, for you, what is one small thing that you believe that if everyone in the world just did this one small thing, it would make the world a better place?
I think that I'll frame it in piggybacking off of what you're saying. I'll give you an application of yes and that I think
Mm-hmm.
can truly impact people's lives. As I mentioned, there's research that shows that the average, at least in the US, the average person will work about 90,000 hours in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And my kind of encouragement is to think yes and in that context of yes, I'm going to work 90,000 hours and I might as well find ways to enjoy it. Because if you do those small things to enjoy it, you're not only going to do your work better, you're going to be more present and show up for your work there, but you're also going to be happier and better at home as well. And it's going to have an absolutely transformative effect on, not only how you work, but how you live. So I think that have a tremendous impact on people as being more intentional using humor in the workplace. And maybe that comes from a yes and mindset of, yes, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to have fun while doing it.
I love it. I agree. That will be awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone listening. Go check out humor at work. Sorry,
Humorthatworks.com.
humorthatworks.com. Go check him out. Connect with Andrew. Watch his TEDx talk. It is awesome. Andrew, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.